All right, so I have been playing some Commander. It was kind of asked of me to take a chill pill on the Vintage Cube for a while, and I thought, yeah, sure. Get back to the roots of what the channel was about. And I've been tweaking the list. Like in between games, I'd try this or I would try that. And for now, I'm kind of settled here. We'll see what happens. Let's see. 31 lands seems to be about right for this deck. I took out Land Tax Scroll Rack a while back because... so the problem is you want about 4 islands. You can kind of make do with 3, but you want about 4 basic lands. Preferably 5 or 6 being optimal. So the closer you can get to that, the better. 4 land tax to be good. And then you need Scroll Rack. And then lastly, you need ways to pick up lands or get your lands off the table. So like Daze, Gush, Deprive are the best ones that I found. So if you have these things all together, then land tax is very consistently good, or fairly consistently good. I mean, first turn land tax can be a fantastic play just because of the interaction with cards like Brainstorm and, of course, Scroll Rack, as I said, and other cards along those lines, as well as the fact that just hitting consistent, steady land drops is a very useful thing. Now, the problem is, if you look at that, I'm at right now, the deck list is pretty tight. So if I were to try to make room for tax and Scroll Rack, I could maybe take out some of the sort of less focused cards. They're just good stuff cards. I could take out, for example, Mentor and Fire Ice, right? And get Tax Rack into the deck. But then I have to also find room for the blue cards and for the enablers. And that's where I run into problems because I'm kind of out of room. So I don't see a way to fit it all into the deck. And the number of basic lands has declined as well as more lands like Throne of the High City have come out, which if you look at Throne of the High City, while Tax Rack is an insane drawing engine, or can be, Throne of the High City also is, and it's a much easier one to work with. So for all those reasons, it's out. Now that means I have one less 2-drop that gives me a little bit of early game consistency. And when I say consistency, really what I mean is just kind of hitting your land drops on time, right? Or mana drops. You know, if you miss a land drop but you play a Soul Ring, that's perfectly fine, right? But Ice kind of fits that role here. I think there's one game where it'll play. But also, there's another card missing here right now. And the card that's missing is the Cheat the Orb card. So the card that's missing right now is War of Invention. So War of Invention at 3 for 0 goes and gets Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, or Mana Crypt. So that was kind of the reason it was in there, but also because it could both fetch the Winter Orb and tap the Winter Orb on your opponent's turn, which would allow you to untap all of your lands. The problem with it is it's triple blue. It's very clunky. People attack blue right away first. And a lot of times, like, you can get fast draws where you've got, you know, first turn Soul Ring, Grim Monolith, second turn Ancient Tomb or something. You've got tons of mana, but you don't have blue, blue, blue without something like a Gilded Lotus or maybe a Coalition Relic or a Chromatic Lantern to fix it. Getting triple blue can be a challenge. So you end up with lots of mana and an X spell that you can't play, and you wait and wait and wait so you can finally get the 3 blue and then finally be able to play it. At which time the impact of it sometimes is a lot less. So I was running into that problem there. Also, it's a card I don't want to see in my opening hand where Fire Ice is. So I just swapped Ice in because it's a little bit, it smooths out the game in the beginning just a little bit. It helps against some of the more absurd creatures like Dark Confidant and Rofellos type cards, you know, Priest of Titania actually, that sort of thing. You know, and occasionally against green, you can 2 for 1 them. When you are playing a Winter Orb deck, Fire can be a little bit more useful in matches where they would be able to work around the Orb with Mana Dorks. And also because you can tap your Winter Orb on your opponent's turn and then untap it. Now, the one disappointing thing about this card that I had to be reminded of again was that Spellseeker cannot fetch it. Even though in the past Spellseeker should have been able to fetch it, Ice or Fire, Spellseeker cannot fetch Fire Ice. This card's treated as 1 card now instead of 2 cards printed on 1. So it doesn't work that way. So that's an unfortunate thing, but still, it's a mystical teachings target. Also, by the way, Muddle will not get it, but it's a mystical teachings target that removes a creature without having to go through the chain of mystical teachings for a mystical tutor for sword splashes, for example, provided the creature is susceptible to fire. Lastly, Ice is a disenchant for a turn 1 mana vault, provided you can hit the vault or a Grim Monolith quick enough. I say disenchant, in quotes, right? But it removes their access to it and draws you a card early. So it's a generally useful, flexible card that you can force a will with when it's not. And I try to keep it in the deck list, but I mean, if you have to cut it, this could be a cut. So Mentor, the other card that you can cut here. Mentor has some value early that kind of slips away later in the game, but it's kind of like this deck doesn't have Moat. You could play it, thankfully, in the multiplayer list, but it doesn't run Moat because of the impact on Breya. But in lieu of Moat, so instead of Moat, we're running the Mentor here as a kind of fake Moat that can gum up the ground, works very well in conjunction with Skull Clamp, and the drawback, it doesn't have immediate impact on the board, but has more long-term upside. It can kill planeswalkers and it can carry equipment. So for all those reasons, it's a pretty good card. And right now it's in there. The other card that it could be might be, for example, Sword of Fire and Ice is another card that I'm not using that could be a substitute for Monastery Mentor as a way to mess with creatures and still be effective against planeswalkers, provided, of course, that you have like a Breya token or something to put it on. But for now, it's a Mentor, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. It is human also, which is convenient since Cavern of Souls is in the deck, and it's good to name human. So that's where I'm at here. You'll see in these games that I played with. Baby Jace. I played with. Well, I guess I'll just kind of bring them up as we come to them instead of listing them all off. I was search for his content and some other cards that I'd really like in here, but everything's it's a matter of what you're losing for what you're getting. So I like sorting and then bringing this down because you can't really, when it's up here, it's kind of hard to see what it is, but do it that way. All right, so let's take a look at these games. Now, here's the game history. So in the last 7 days, I played a little Commander and maybe a lot of Commander. I was looking to try to get some games that would be really good for you to watch. Unfortunately, it's extremely, extremely hard to get games of a high quality to watch. But I was like dinking around with like the deck and I tweaked it and I kind of got some rust out of the system. I was playing a little Vintage Cube and I kind of got tired of that, and then I decided to focus on Commander. So from that point on, I played, I don't know how many games this is. I'll spin through as many as I can. I had one loss due to a foolish choice on my part combined with bad luck. I will show that to you now. So I'm playing against Muzio Visionary Architect, and I have a hand that looks good. If I hit a land, great. So now all I need to do is draw a land, and I can go land Mox to ready, and then I think their commander is just completely shut down, but I miss it. So I've got Force of Will, and I don't read the card correctly. I didn't RTFC, basically. So I thought this was, look at the top cards. You may reveal an artifact where X is equal to the highest converted mana cost you control and put it into the battlefield. I thought the X applied to the number of cards and the casting cost of the artifact. Because the way I read this was that in the example here, my opponent was highest casting cost is 2. They'd look at 2 cards and they would, in the 2 cards, if they had an artifact that cost 2 or less, then they could put it into play. That's what I thought would happen. So I figured I could wait a little while. It sucks if they hit Soul Ring or something, but if they, they can get more mana, but they're down to 4 cards, and I can force fill whatever they might play off of that mana. So I figured, and then get this thing off the board, and I'm good. So I let this thing go. That is not how this card works, though. It's look at the top X cards where X is the highest converted mana cost, and you may put an artifact into play. Even if that artifact costs 10 million mana, and you have a 1 casting cost artifact, if the top card is that artifact, you can put it into play. So, having Found that out after the fact. Opponent ramps up and can only still look at 2 artifacts. Oh, I taxed my mana too, which is just pretty painful. Right on time there. And boom, hits the Saffin in, and I concede when I realize my mistake. Like, this is ridiculous. Top 2 cards, find Staffin in, 2 cards per turn. All right, I lose. My draw wasn't great. They had a good disruptor, and I made a mistake. So you put them all together. I lost. I deserved to lose that game. This one here I lost. I lost because my opponent basically cheesed a win out of me for, I don't know why. I don't even know if it was intentional. They sat for 3 minutes or 2-something minutes. By then I started a new match and carried on, thinking they would time out and it wouldn't screw up my record. And then they pop back in and hit OK so that it passed priority to me without me knowing. And then 4 minutes later I lost. Okay, you got me. The rest of my games, from the point at which I quit playing Vintage Cube and started playing Commanders, so there's a few games there on 1-6 and then a lot of games on 1-12 and 1-13 have been wins. So I played a few games in 1-6 that I'll just skip over, and we'll go straight to the 1-12 and 1-13 since the deck list will be closer to where it is today in these games. So let's take a look. Now I realize there's a lot of talking, so I should have a link in the description that can jump you right to the gameplay, and then if you stuck through all this, then you're either interested or a glutton for punishment, so thank you either way. All right, so I've got a pretty rough start here against Narset. This is not where you want to be, but if I can get some mana, then maybe I can get into this game. So from my opponent's point of view, they don't know how bad my hand was before that brainstorm and how much that brainstorm just basically saved my game here. All right, so I'm going to trinket into Soul Ring here and equip and pass. This is not great, but I'm hoping that I can pressure my opponent and then use Forbid to buy some time. The other option I considered there was trinket into Skull Clamp in order to refill my hand. Fortunately, the deck delivered here, so I'm just going to obviously counter that. And what I'm thinking now is that if I can get a black source, I could get a Necropotence. I need some way, so I end up going with the Clamp plan. I need some way to refill my hand is the key here. So with the 6 mana I've got, I think because I had Clamp on my mind and I was missing the 3rd black, I go this route. That Strip Mine was really nice because it's going to keep them off Narset for a little bit longer. But I want to draw cards first. As long as they don't Ancient Tomb me here or Soul Ring, I've got one more turn before I have to worry about Narset. So I figured I'd take the 4 cards. Opponent has a pretty nasty play here. They get to pick which cards I can keep. They cannot do lands, but they do artifacts, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker. And they get to do that for me and then for them. So they're going to lose 1 permanent, probably is it Signet. And then my opponent was having a big challenge trying to figure out how to make this card work, and we talked about it, and they eventually worked it out. And so I end up losing quite a few cards there. Pretty nasty for me, but not backbreaking. It does get my opponent back in this game, in a game where I probably would have been able to put the brakes on him. But I top deck Fabricate, and my opponent plays... I point out to them how horrible this was. My opponent plays Damping Field. So whenever a permanent deals damage to them, it bounces back to the owner's hand, which means I just got a free Trinket Mage off of this. They just gave me tons of card drawing here. This is so good. So now I'm going to Crypt and Fabricate, and with exactly 2 mana up, Crucible, 1 floating plus 2 mana untapped. Attack their mana base, keep them off Narset forever is the plan here. Opponent plays a Strionic Resonator, which, if they want to copy my Wasteland, my Strip Mine effect, I guess they can. All right, Trinket Mage again. This is just gross. All right, so I need more cards in my hand, so I've used up my Clamp, so I'll have to go Sensei's Divining Top instead. And at this point, my opponent does indeed give up. I think they realized how bad the Dissipation Field, how badly they screwed up with that. But anyways, you can see at Throne of the High City, I could start drawing 2 cards per turn, but since I was Strip Mining, I was going to continue that plan, and then if they address the Crucible, we'd transition to the 2 cards per turn off the Throne of the High City. So, oops. Little mistake there on it. But we talked about it, and they were good-natured about it and moved on. So, game against 22. And their commander is Daxos of Miletus, and I've got pretty nice start. You can see I had Council's Judgment instead of Mentor, and you can see I would have probably been better off with Mentor here. Like Mentor, Mox Diamond, Pass right there would have been amazing, right? So this is the difference between reactive versus proactive. In fact, I don't even know that it would be beatable at all. But I'm going to go ahead and disrupt here. And I could be building towards my commander, but yeah, see, if this were Mentor, I'd just be smashing my opponent. I mean, instead, I do have this business with Council's Judgment here, which is fine, but if it were Mentor, I would have been smashing their face and countering and getting more guys, and it just would have snowballed out of control, right? Here's Sword of Fire and Ice here, also a card that I was... I really feel like the card wants to be in this deck. I simply don't know what cut to make to get the card in. So anyway, pretty good game there. Very simple, even without the Mentors. I was able to quickly put them away, bury them in card advantage, and drive on. So, all right. So King Dark 20 here is playing F to Mulligan. They're playing Liliana Heretic. Heretical Healer, rather. So, yeah, some sort of Reanimator deck. And my draw is really weak here. I'm going to take a risk here, and I'm going to go get Wayfarer, and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that on this turn they play their commander rather than killing my creatures. So they flip this, take a card out of my hand, I pitch the Teachings. Now I can start going to get some mana. So I'm going to do that, and boom, Factor Fiction ready. There's a Cabal Stronghold. There's a Guest Grimoire. So I'm going to Factor Fiction in response, hoping... So this is why, I've said this in the past, this is why you do this. So I Factor Fiction in response. So with it on the stack, I reveal Force of Will. So my opponent overcompensates for the Force of Will by setting it off to the side without, by itself. Because they don't want me to counter their spell. Now, of course... They give me a disenchant to kill it anyway, which is terrible. But the reason you Factor Fiction in response is because of that sort of knee-jerk, like, I don't want my spell countered feeling that sometimes causes people, if you're lucky and you hit a Force of Will or another counter, or even if you hit removal sometimes, to overcompensate. And you want to, an old saying of mine is you always want to give your opponent maximum opportunity to make misplays. Right, so my opponent's continuing to make us both discard also, which is really good here because I've got dead cards in my hand. And, excuse me for the yawns, and I'm getting cards out of their hand, which is real nice. All right, so Vampiric, Vandal Blast. I'm gonna get some more mana going and pass. Skull Clamp my Spellseeker. When it takes out a Disenchant, it's a Cabal Coffers and a Liliana of the Dark. All right, so tutoring time and then Vamp so that I can go get something to deal with Liliana. Great way to do it is this. Teferi will take it out. And my opponent can then... and then I Clamp Weathered Wayfarer because I think I'm done using the Wayfarer. It's a little bit slow here. And I want to use it before they Liliana of the Dark. For some reason, they got that swamp they needed. So I figured it was going to die soon. So I'd take the 2 cards off of it. So opponent gets a Smothering Abomination. So whenever they sack a creature, they're going to draw a card. So, and of course attacks and kills Teferi. And are we going to bug? I think we're going to replay bug again. But you know what? At least the replays are kind of working. I can't get the log to come up, and I think we're bugged out, so I'm just going to close it. I'm pretty sure I didn't tap 5 mana and say go right there. So anyway, I managed to, I'm way ahead on cards, and I had turned the corner on my opponent's strats, and they get a lot of mana, but they're really long cards, so I'm able to just I can't suppress their mana and keep them from playing their cards, so I neutralize them instead and end up way ahead on answers. Here an opponent jumps in a game, decides they don't want to play Breya and quits. I don't remember what all of these games are, so I have to kind of walk through them in hindsight, basically. I can't get the log up, so show chat, show game log. Yeah, it's not coming up. So we'll just have to deal with it. All right, so opponent's playing Padim, which rewards you for having the highest casting cost artifact on the board. Unfortunately for them, Breya already is going to cost 4 and kills that thing, and I'm going to always have the highest casting cost artifact on the board, most likely, given that this is the whole point of this deck. So basically, my deck does what my opponent's deck wants to do, except it does it better with more options and more flexibility, so more consistently. So at this point, with a really fast start, turn 2, Crypt into Dynamo, into Map, into Throne, my opponent scoops, because, you know, obviously I'm going to start drawing 2 cards per turn, and I have tons of mana to do something with all that fuel, and my opponent wants nothing to do with that, so fair enough. But yeah, I would have enjoyed playing it out, but it was definitely over. All right, so now I'm playing against Breon Stout Arm, and I have another one of these draws where I've drawn both my Scrubland and my Plateau. My opponent cycles off a Violent Impact, so I guess I'm all right with that. Got a really fast start, though, in the end, because of a Grim Monolith I top deck into a Dynamo land. So Mind Twist my opponent's hand, and they've got an anti-graveyard card in play, but it's not really great. And I'm able to get, of course, here I'm still running Sword of Fire and Ice, so I'm able to go get that down, which I like a lot in this situation. But I can't get through the 0-4 wall. Opponent then paths me, so it fixes my mana problem. They've got no cards in hand, though, so I'm going to be able to dack away their blocker. Or rather, sorry about that, to ready away their blocker, and then dack, improve my hand. And the idea here was I was going to obviously get my commander down, equip it, and then from there, well, I'm way ahead on mana, way ahead on cards. Mind Twist basically broke my opponent off right there, so. All right, so that was Rena Soto. So Benevolent Banevolent Star is next. Excuse me. Thank you, honey. You're welcome. My wife is totally awesome. All right, so Niv Mizzet Perun. Seems like it should be a really good commander, and I think it probably is. It looks really threatening. It's a card I thought about for here, but triple red is asking for a lot, and Necropotence does what that card does a lot better. But look at this insane start I've got here. Off an Imperial Seal to get things going. I just showed my opponent that I tutored for Mind Twist, so their Thought Vessel, which gives them unlimited hand size, is contravened by my Mind Twist, which gives them unlimited hand emptying. Go away. All right, cool. So look at those. Look at that crazy set of cards. And hiding in there is Commit to Memory. So if they get to 6 mana, they're going to be able to restore their hand to full. Also, I've got this dragon who's a potential threat here if they can get enough red. So they're going for a hand recovery. Fortunately, of course, I know that. So I've got Force of Will, and phew, I'm able to stop them. And they scoop, I think, because 4, 5, 6, 7. In very short order, my opponent's under a ton of damage pressure. They don't have, they're 2 red short of Niv Mizzet, which could be just 1 land if they have the land that converts 2 blue into 2 red, or 1 red into 2 blue. But they're unwilling to play it out, and I don't blame them. Plus, if I had 2 Breya, and I would, Breya would kill the Niv Mizzet on the first cast, and they'd have to get going and make it to a second one. So what they really needed was like Wheel of Fortune or Time Twister or something there. And I guess holding out for that wasn't something they were up for, so fair enough. Here I'm playing against Azuri Claw Progress. And I've got a a good hand. It's a little slow, but it seems extra good against green because of the always when you have Swords of Plowshares. Sorry about that. Trying to adjust my camera. Against green, you're always a little bit happier than when you don't. So here I have interesting possible choices, and I decide the easiest one is just Vindicate their 2-color Soul Ring over there. Now I'm going to Spellseeker and go get myself a Vamp because I'm trying to accelerate into Mind Twist as fast as I can. But my opponent missed a land drop, so as opposed to accelerating myself into Mind Twist, I'm going to decelerate them. Again, I go get Sword of Fire and Ice here. Maybe a little bit aggressive, but I figured I could keep killing creatures that they would play, mana creatures, if they were to try to get out of this mana crunch. I probably could have just gone and got Skull Clamp and then clamped the Spellseeker to try to dig deeper and then clamped the 2 Breyas. And it's thoughts like that, I could have gone and got Skull Clamp and probably done better because I get cards faster. That made me realize that maybe Sword of Fire and Ice doesn't belong, despite the fact that I keep getting it. We certainly haven't seen it come to play yet. Pod 6 was Jerks, my next opponent. And we'll see how this goes. So I've got a great start. This opponent's playing Krufix. And I'm not sure what the hexproof creature indicates, if they're trying to win with some kind of poison build or something, but I decide here I'm just going to sit on Mana Drain or Impulse. Opponent does nothing, so Impulse it is. Go ahead and take some more ramp. Get a Workshop into a 3rd mana, which makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. I may actually DT here and get even more mana into play, but despite wanting to do that, a Mana Drain into a Teferi is just such an attractive option. Unfortunately, unfortunately, my opponent plays Predator Ooze, and that's not exactly a card that I want to waste a Mana Drain on. So instead, I just Demonic Tutor for a Crucible here. I'm going to sit on a Mystical Tutor with Force of Will. If I need to Force of Will, I'll probably force with the Mystical because I have everything in my hand that I want. So I'd force with the Mystical. But if my opponent doesn't give me anything to force, I might actually play the Mystical Tutor and do something with it that way. Anyway, my opponent facing Crucible of Destruction there, backseating quickly. So Pod 6 was Jerks, but I guess I was a bigger one in that game in some ways. All right, so here we go. We got Scooter 30. Excuse me for a moment. All right, again, here I am with another, my opponent's playing Prosh. Here I am with another Council's Judgment hand where wouldn't I rather have Monastery Mentor here. So I'd be able to go, I could have gone Ancient Tomb Mentor and then just start producing a lot of guys and pressure my opponent pretty heavily. Opponent's going crazy with development over there in mana and potential cards, but that has not actually gotten there yet. I'm kind of making some desperation here because if my opponent casts Prosh, I probably lose. So due to that land coming in and play tap, they're 1 turn off from actually Proshing me. And I'm over here digging and digging and digging, trying to find the second white so that I can vote for Soul Ring. And so here's what happened. Sorry. Sorry about that. So here's what happens. I vote for Soul Ring, and I think my opponent misreads the card. And if I remember correctly, they voted for Obelisk of Jund or Skull Clamp. And when they lost both permanents, they realized they screwed up royally, and they scooped. So Council of Judgment, I mean, it was good here. It got the Soul Ring off the board. It would have been better as either... I still think it would have been better as Mentor, though. Now, another option could have just be that card could be something like Oblivion Ring, which is basically Council's Judgment that's easier to play, and you can tutor for it. So that way you could Enlighten Tutor for a solution to a Planeswalker, while Mystical Tutor will also get one because it gets Vindicate. And that's definitely a thought that's been on my mind back and forth. And of course, Oblivion Ring on a commander, just no issue, right? Because it goes away. Go back to the command zone just like it would, for the most part, just like it would if it were a Vindicate or a Council's Judgment. So I don't know. I mean, if it were Oblivion Ring effect, then I could have gone turn 2 Oblivion Ring off of the Tomb and just smoked their Soul Ring and slowed the entire game way down. So that's another thought to consider as I'm talking with you. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I've got another game here. Smoking Ace 72 488. So, and I've got a mulligan and mulligan again, and I'm playing against green white blue. So this could be a problem, especially if they get a fast start. Well, top is not fast, and I rip Dark Confidant right off the top. So good. My opponent's got the ability to give their creatures haste now. And I find myself a mana crypt. So I'm going to run out the crypt into Karn play here and start producing constructs. I don't swing because I haven't seen Condemn in, I would say, years, but there's still no reason to run into one right there. A little bit of damage, probably not going to be a huge deal. Although Hall of the Bandit Lord could hurt them. The problem is I had to play the Urborg to get the Confidant down, so I've given them a way to play. So my opponent's doing the right thing. They're producing lots of mana and they're attacking mine. However, let's see, I had Baby Jason here. However, so I can't play Winter Orb here because my opponent's way ahead on mana and they've killed my alternate mana, even though it would pump the constructs. I'm just going to sit on Mana Leak here. Cannot Mana Leak that because I don't have 3. Opponent swings in with it. It has haste because of Hall of the Bandit Lord. So I'm going to have to chump, actually. Opponent goes for a Cultivate. I'll leak while I can. It's unlikely if I let them have the extra mana from Cultivate that I'm going to be able to Mana Leak much of anything. All right, so I'm taking damage from that and struggling. Go ahead and use Karn to get a Chromatic Lantern in my hand. At this point, I've got a Exiled Cryptic. But my construct is now 6/6 and growing. And my opponent taps a ton of mana, and I think, what is going on here? This is not good. Wargate for 5 on Shalai. Not a threat to me, really. So turns out I'm going to be just fine. So I go ahead and take Cryptic Command, and here's the thing. Tap all their guys, smash in, and boom, exactly 14. So here's the thing. This is back to the O-ring versus, whatever versus whatever. The mentor idea is games like this show you how sometimes you don't need to get control of the game. You can just win, and few cards allow that as proficiently as mentor does. So we'll see. We'll see what I settle on, but I don't know. At this point, I'm playing against Luta, and I've got a keep that relies on Preordain finding me some mana, and they're playing Obsidat. Unfortunately, it does. I get a second mana into play, but I'm still not great here. I decide I'm going to Blind Obedience this card because artifacts coming into play could hurt me if I drew like a Grim Monolith. Lucky me, knowing my deck and what is going to threaten me. So I top deck that Grim Monolith, which allows me, thankfully, having countered the Blind Obedience, to have this totally absurd turn. And at this point, my opponent scoops when I fabricate for I believe, Winter Orb here. My opponent just gives up. So I'm about to drop a Winter Orb into play off of this. I remember this is the one land preordained hand that looked pretty bad if you actually go back to the beginning. Too bad there's no rewind button to jump back to the beginning, but I don't want to run through it again. Anyway, that was just a very enjoyable hand where knowing that a card that looks pretty harmless actually could have hurt me quite a bit, and addressing it saved my butt. I think I was definitely lost there. So mulligan a few times there, and I'm playing against the Dragon now. Wasted 6/6/6 running the Dragon. Get a first turn Mana Vault, which is always a great way to start. You see this version's running Search for its Kanta, so we'll go ahead and slam that down and see how it does for me. Trying different things, like I said. Opponent putrefies the Gilded Lotus, which was correct. All right, so as Kanta throws away a Seal of Cleansing, and I find a Lantern that I cannot play because the Opal's not producing mana. Next turn I have to throw away a Karn, and I do find a mana source which allows me to get Lantern, and now the Opal's up. Opponent's got the ability to have big dragons, but that's about it. So right here I decide I'm actually going to untap the Vault because I don't really want to run my commander into my opponent's untapped mana. And I knew Vampiric Tutor was on top there. I'm going to play Kaiga, and this is walking into the trap that I set, so I go ahead and tutor for a card that I'm not going to put on the bottom as Kanta. So this is one of the problems with this Kanta, is that we have all these tutors that put things on top of the deck, and then, so I'm going to by the way, the turn here, if you haven't figured it out, is Treachery, Tezzeret, Orb View, Scoop. And Scoop. Okay, so the problem with Azcanta is, of course, we have all these cards that put cards on top, and then you don't really want to mill them off. So a lot of times, like, it can be good, and the card's crazy, and it flipped. It's amazing, but Winter Orb flipped Azcanta. It's so-so. Tutors, Azcanta, very so-so. It just, you run into a lot of that, and so I ended up pulling it. So I love the card. I want it to be good in here, but I just think it's probably not. Anyway, if I were playing like the old deck, if you look back on this channel, what was it? I don't know, years and years ago, there was a Sliver Queen deck. If I were playing that deck then, because that deck had at one point Quiet Speculation, Ancient Grudge, and a Deep Analysis, and a bunch of other flashback cards, I think Azcanta would be better there, because every time you get a flashback card, it's like drawing a card off of the ability rather than just milling a card. So, so by no means am I saying that the card doesn't have a place in the right deck. It just doesn't feel like this is it. All right, so I've got a Mentor here. I can evaluate a little bit. I'm playing against Mezrazek running Drana, and my opponent takes Force of Will out of my hand, so here I'm going to go ahead and play the Mentor, and we're going to see, does it do any work here? Well, maybe. My opponent Vampiric Tutors for, hard to say, maybe it was the Mana Vault they got? Oh, it was the Mind Twist probably. Okay, well that's not attractive, but I did get a top deck Ancient Tomb. The only card that my opponent left in my hand was Toxic Deluge, but that Ancient Tomb off the top allowed me to get moving right away on drawing 2 cards per turn again. And when it bogs me, so I've been bogged down by graveyard removal here. But there's that Fire and Ice doing nothing again. It's happened quite a few times, so you can see why it's not in here, at least for now. And here we are. Opponent's going to try to run out a Vampire Nighthawk. Now I have to counter this because I can't allow a creature to hit me, so I need to stop any creatures that could hit me. And lucky me, Felwar Stone finds me a Breya, which will allow me to potentially hit my opponent with Sword of Fire and Ice, but more importantly, it helps make it easier to protect my board. And I am 1 black mana away from getting that Necro. When it languishes, my board clear, and boom, there's the black mana I need. So, Necro down. I'm going to go ahead and Spell Seek into... I have to think about it. What do you get here? Well, I decided the card to get is actually Swords of Plowshares. Then I'm going to Necro for 5 and allow the card drawing to give me my last card. So now this effect is just giving me 1 life per turn, basically. But, importantly, I take Swords there because if my opponent were to play something big and nasty that I need to plow, I have the mana to do it there. And it's very important that I don't get hit with a creature and give my opponent 2 cards per turn. All right, so now I'm going to, speaking of 2 cards per turn, I have all the cards I could ever possibly want here. I'm dipping into my opponent's hand a little bit. I've got Swords to Plowshares. I just don't want a black hasted creature to hit me. Like, I forget the one that, the dragon that Brian used to use in his mono black decks, but at any rate, I know that they exist, so we're going to play around that. So I STP there because it's just mana efficient, and we don't really worry about card efficiency when there's a Necro out. So now I've got a Seal of Cleansing, and the nice thing about Seal of Cleansing is that, okay, so I'm going to stop for a sec. So the nice thing about Seal of Cleansing, again, in the format where top exists, is if you put it in play, if they tap the top to use it, to draw a card off the top of the deck, you can then sack the top, or you can sack the seal and destroy the top. And while they will get a card, it's one of the few ways you can get rid of a top. So you go down a card, but you permanently remove that card selection from their options. And again, with Necro, cards don't matter, so really nice to be in the situation there where I knew that was one less thing for me to have to worry about with the seal in play. So it's one of the reasons why I like seal in here. All right, Nady GH here 6 is playing Soramaro First to Dream, and it's a card that rewards them for having cards in hand. So here I've got the Jace still. Opponent's got a really fast start. Look at that. 2, 4, 6, 7, 2, 4, 5, 6 mana, but 7 really once they sack the landscape on turn 2 is a lot of mana. So I would love some of that mana. So I'm going to go ahead and Demonic Tutor, thankfully having drawn a land there for Dak Faden. My opponent, Burnished Heart Beatdown here. I'm not quite sure that I understand that, but unfortunately it means Dak is probably due to die. So I'm going to steal their Chalice. I've dropped them by 2 and increased mine by 2. So Dak Faden there represented a 4-point mana swing, and he dies. They failed to sack their Myriad Landscape also, which was a really odd one. All right, so I'm going to Snapcaster here, and my opponent can equip Diviner's Wand if they want to my Snapcaster, and for some crazy reason, if I remember right, they misclick or something, and they do. Is this game going to advance, or are we going to bug out? Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to bug out here because Snapcaster Go, no equip is not what happened. Yeah, so I can't fully walk you through the rest of the game, but what I can tell you is that at the end of the game, so I mana leak one of their plays, and then, like I think I used Snapcaster Demonic Tutor is what I did, and then mana leak their commander. And then from there, I think to ferry away their Crypt, I want to say. I think maybe the Demonic Tutor was for Will, and I will, and then Dak Faden their Crypt. Basically, what ends up happening is, oh, I remember now. It was a Demonic Tutor for Vandal Blast. So Vandal Blast their board away and leave them with just a few lands, and then they're facing this hand, and then they give up. Their commander costs 8, and they have nothing. That's what that Demonic Tutor is for. All right, Bestima is playing Zozu the Punisher, and I keep a hand with Necropotence in it, so that doesn't seem great, but also fetch lands that I'm not using, so yeah, we'll see what happens here, but I'm going to go ahead and start searching for lands now and develop. I can use the Strip Mine Wayfarer trick if they don't play another land, but instead they play Strip Mine, tap it for Zozu, so that actually gives me an opportunity to kill their Strip Mine. So I'm going to do that, take some damage here, but I get to Wasteland the Strip Mine and Strip Mine a mountain, and set them back a good bit. When it has Care Keep, I couldn't care less. Personally, plays a Dingus Egg, which means fetch lands now will deal 2 to me from Zozu, and then 2 to me from the Dingus Egg, and then 2 to me from Zozu after the land comes into play. So essentially, I'm not playing fetch lands. That's what we're getting at. So I leave 2 1/1s up. I'm quite happy to block here and then fetch a land and kill a Zozu on the way. One plays Ankh of Mishra, so land's really getting pretty painful here. So this is going to be a game of just carefully marshalling resources. And the number one resource that I'm marshalling is life total. However, I decide I'm done here because I want to impulse. I have Plow Up available. I could Dak Faden one of the artifacts, but all their artifacts are continuous effects that don't do anything if I steal them, so I just leave them alone. All right, so Tectonic Instability taps a land when somebody taps a land. Plays a land, rather. So it's going to be, basically it means very difficult to counter. To run counterspells. But I have a solution for that in Sword of Feast and Famine. So I plowed at the end of their turn, fetched a Mishra's Workshop, and Sword of Feast and Famine in, crash in. I have all untapped lands again. Impulse into Disenchant and pass with Weathered Wayfarer untapped yet again. Opponent creates a Carekeep token. So that'll be fine. I decided not to use the Wayfarer because life is getting a little precious there. Find myself a Vandal Blast. I'm going to get rid of the Tectonic Instability because it's mildly annoying, and I'm planning to Vandal Blast everything else. And I'm not playing a land here because there's 2 more lands down in play to get anywhere would really hurt me. But what I could do is I could go get Ancient Tomb and just clear the board. And then I was thinking, well, if I don't get Ancient Tomb, I could go get Urborg and do it. But instead, with me at 6 life, and my opponent only having 1 card in hand, I decide that what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my commander to play so that I can gain up to 10 life here and just sit tight on that for now. My opponent's down to 9 for one thing, so they've done tremendous amounts of damage to themselves. So with them really low on life, I decide, all right, kill their blocker and smash in with the team, and that's it. Opponent takes lethal exactly, and I don't even have to worry about, again, just, I don't have to worry about getting control of the game. I can just end the game, so that's what I do. Because my opponent's messing around with a bunch of permanents that don't affect anything except life totals, it's the equivalent of really good lightning bolts to the face, while ignoring my creatures and losing. So, opponent's playing Aetherios, God of Passage, and I see Shadowborn Apostle. So this is probably an automatic win just based on that, because these silly Shadowborn decks they don't do anything, they don't work. Alright, so I'm going to ramp out here, get a Thran Dynamo into a sword, and I'm 2 turns away from playing my commander potentially. Plays theirs. A commander who doesn't do anything. It's just unfortunate. Alright, anyway, so I'm going to ramp into Teferi, and I decide I'm going to just take a card and sit on Disenchant and pass, but very soon I can use Teferi to tuck their commander. In the old days, a god like this, or Indestructible, those type of cards were more threatening because it was harder to deal with, but in the day and age of Teferi, they're just not. So I'm going to go ahead and play my commander here. I've got 5 mana up. I've got tons of mana up, right? So I can play my commander here, tuck their commander if I want to, which I probably will. Just to make it cost more, just to slow them down. Equip my sword and play Grim Monolith and pass. Opponent doesn't let me get that far and just scoops. Alright, so that was J-Boss. Here we've got Alvaro Paul Ocesserum. Is what it is. Alvaro Paul Ocesserum playing Verena Lich Queen, which is a strange one that I haven't seen much of, but I've got a first turn Jace here, so it's the baby Jace though, and my opponent entombs a Scarab God, so thankfully it's not like Grizzlebrand. Scarab God, I'm not even worried about having it be entombed. So because I wanted to test these new cards out, I'm intentionally focusing on trying to get Jace and Search going here. So get an early flip on Jace, plus it up and pass. I'll go ahead and get the oh, sorry about that. The Iskanta going. Flashback a Ponder, which is going to be a shuffle. Find a Soul Ring, which is really nice. Opponent vamps. I assume that means the big guy's coming out. The Modest Scarab God. Yeah, so Necromancy. Kind of not great there. And then plays a Grave Crawler, so a lot of mediocrity going on over there. Alright, so sword getting flipped, and then I'm going to, or tucked away, dumped rather, and then I'm going to go ahead and yet again go ahead and get Teferi because the card's just ridiculously amazing. Tuck their Scarab God and shrink their guy into a 0/1. So here Jace is doing some work. Of all the cards I tested, I think Jace, the baby Jace, is the one that I would most like in the deck. It is currently Fire Ice, and perhaps it should not be. But so here I flip this Kanta. Replay of Empiric Tutor, and this is part of the reason why it's crazy. Jace goes into my hand directly, which is the thing I vamp for because of Teferi. I go ahead and kill their big creature, their commander, and play Jace so that I can bounce their Gravecaller for the turn. And at this point, my opponent gives up. They're playing Reanimator, and they're facing Jace, Teferi, Jace. It's pretty much over there. So yeah, Jace here. I mean, maybe it's better than Fire Ice just because of the fact that with all the tutors I've already ran to that game, it's got more upside. I don't know, but Fire Ice is a nice orb cheater and general flexible card for early threats like this Karlov, for example. So I guess we'll just see. We'll just see. All right, so here I am playing against Troy Hessian running Karlov of the Ghost Council, and I've got a pretty nice start. And for the, I don't know how many times this is in a row, I've got a Sword of Fire and Ice just sitting on the battlefield doing nothing, right? Not being a Monastery Mentor, for example, or something. So here I am just sitting here doing nothing with my sword. Don't mind me. And I decided not to tithe there. I could tithe into my commander and equip the sword. Do something that way. But I decided, sorry about the yawning again, I decided I'm just going to wait and go ahead and clear their board for now. And hold off on the tithe, hold off on playing the land, see if I can get myself 2-for-1 on the tithe. I don't, so at this point, it is time to get the commander down and then immediately kill their commander. And I'm going to sit on the fetch land because I still want the 2-for-1 on the tithe. And I can do the tithe trick here. Sack, holding control, tithe in response, grab a couple of lands and the land I fetched. Go ahead and equip the sword, and my opponent has removal. Okay, fair enough. I'm done. I'm just going to play a land and be done so I can teachings. It runs out an Elspeth Terrell. Mystical Teachings in response for a mana drain, and something is not right here. So I'm confident that I did not play Plateau, by the way. I played Fountain and I took 2 there, and then this mana drain makes more sense, right? But the replay is yet again bugging out. At least it's working at all. So I ended up mana draining this card though, and then my opponent gives up right there, which would have fueled a flashback teachings, of course. And next is Better Left Undead. So I think at this point, if you add it all up, I think I'm something like, I don't know, against random individuals, right? Against non-competitive decks mixed with competitive decks mixed with everything in between. The deck's something like 35-1. I'm not counting the one where my opponent just timed me out and nothing happens. So here we are, Better Left Undead, playing Azuri Cloud Progress. Opponent misses a land drop and scoops. That's an unfortunate game there. I would have liked to have played Impulse and then move into Guild Lotus, like Deluge territory, if they'd gotten a fast start or something like that. But it is what it is. So I played against MK Dem next, and they are running with Zugo Helm Smasher. I've got a mulligan. I think I leave a... I want to say I leave the Swords of Plowshares on top against a deck like this. Yeah, because it'll take out a 7/2 hasted creature for very low mana investment, which could be nice. But right here, my opponent plays this Pure Steel Paladin. To set, I'm going to take that out because I don't want him drawing extra cards. So we're going to smoke that thing. And one thing that I was doing on this day was I was testing with not running Broken Shackles. So if you see me getting non-blue lands, it's because there's no Shackles in my deck. Instead, I had actually searched for his contest. We'll see how much better this card or worse it is than Shackles. But I wanted to test Search, and I needed a cut. And I said, well, maybe I have enough creature removal without it. By the way, Swiftfoot Boots is the card they fetched, so I already knew opponent was not really, the biggest threat, right? So I'm trying to flip. They open the armory here for some kind of Hammer of Nazahan. I'm not sure what it is or does, but not much of an issue for me. Going to go ahead and start tutoring. Grab a Skull Clamp here, Impulse, a Vandal Blast, since my opponent's playing a bunch of equipment, and I'm hoping that they won't even play it since I have the Vandal Blast, but they do, which is going to allow them to hit pretty hard next turn. So to get the land down, I've used up the plow earlier, so I am going to have to eat this 10 points of damage, which is rough. And then I've got 2 things to deal with. I've got to deal with the commander and all the artifacts. Fortunately, Treachery allows me to do both. So go ahead and do this. I'm going to dig, find myself a Grim Monolith. I was digging, trying to find artifact mana to make my mana a little bit better. And I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist here, and then I'll take out the artifacts next turn. And my opponent gives up. So this way, if I twist first and my opponent's holding even more artifact, and as it turns out they were, the Argentum armor, I could have been in a lot of trouble. But this line allowed me to follow it up by a board clear, and then of course follow that up by either using Escanta or using Breya to draw more cards off of a Skull Clan. So yeah, strange stuff going on there, but and now we got Avello Paul Okesrum again as my opponent playing Verena Lich Queen, and I think wanting, I don't know if this was me jumping in the games or who I said, Mr. Alvaro there or what. I assume Paul means it's a Mr. So we're going to run out Search for Escanta again. Oh, my opponent's got Soul Ring. So I'm going to dump a Tezzeret, find a land. So Search was definitely helpful there, and I'm going to fabricate into Crypt so I can keep up with the Soul Ring here, get the map down, and call it. Opponent now can run out their commander instead, opts for a Crucible Demonic Tutor turn. So I assume this means they're getting Strip Mine. And time is short. All right, so Search for Escanta, Enlightened Tutor. I decide to let it go. I find a Cavern of Souls. Go ahead and run out Jace. Now Jace Search is great because you can put back cards that you want to get rid of. But if you have Jace, you're probably already winning anyway. So I get a seal there, and although I could kill the Crucible of Worlds, I decided to kill their Soul Ring in case they did not go for Strip Mine and instead went with a big play. I figured that I had a lot of time before I needed to worry about it, recurring removal. And as you can see, I find more disenchants to answer. I had Spellseeker Disenchant, right, for starters. But anyway, I find more solutions to the threats that they're presenting here. Opponent's Liliana last helps my Spellseeker. The last helps it. There's an Undead War Chief, and I probably should have just drained that War Chief right there and used it to power up a Karn. But I think I really wanted to use the map. And we're going to bug out, but basically what happens here is I do get control of the game pretty easily. I get my commander out. I take out Liliana, last hope, and use Jace to bounce the War Chief and out-tempo my opponent while attacking their mana base off of the... So I tap these two. I go get a Strip Mine, right? I use 4 mana to play my commander, to bounce this thing, and pretty much get control of the game. My opponent ends up scooping and playing another one. So I end up with an active Jace at the end of the whole thing. And if you remember, there was a Dreddy on top. So opponent jumps into the next game, realizes it's me, and says they've had enough. That's twice in one day. They're not down for a third one. And I'll get a couple more games from the 12th. I'll run through the handful of games from the 13th, and then we'll call it good. All right, so great start here. Playing against Atrata the Silencer. Opponent leads off with Ancient Tomb, but they play Strionic Resonators, so kind of weak there. Copies triggered abilities. If it was activated abilities, they could have copied that fetch land, and that card would be pretty neat there, but instead... So I'm going to Tithe Trick off of a Wasteland play that I Vampiric Tutored for, because I don't want them having an Ancient Tomb. They're one turn away from their commander if I allow that. And then I'm going to go ahead and play Stoneforge here, which is a little questionable. I probably should have gone Grim Monolith just to get that going first, but we'll see what happens. Opponent plays Thief of Sanity, so I'm going to ramp for Crypt into Grim. So I think this must have been the reason why I was planning to do all that, was because I had that. I saw the line where the Enlightened Tutor would allow me to hit him with the Sword of Feast and Famine right away. I did not see the Thief of Sanity coming, and I think here my opponent scooped a little early. They should have hit me with the Thief first, seeing what happened, and then decided. What they don't know is how dead my hand is. However, regardless of what ended up happening, they could have played like Necro off my deck, right? But at any rate, my next turn I play my commander, and then the Thief of Sanity's been dealt with at that point. So the funny thing is, if I play my commander there and my opponent counters, and then I hit them with the sword, then I untap the 4 lands I used to play the commander, and I have the mana crypt left over, so I play my commander again. So I'd have spent 10 mana that turn. And if they don't, then I just play my commander and untap all my lands and use it to untap the Grim Monolith. So the Daniel jumps into another game with me, and I make the same thing, ramping early, developing my board, getting lots of mana on turn 2. Opponent's got a much slower start, and I'm going to threaten them immediately. They do get the Ancient Tomb going, and a Daimir Signet, and a Phyrexian Arena, but as you saw from the opening hand, I've been holding this Disenchant by luck. So I go ahead and top deck a sword, smash them, untap my mana, destroy that thing, and sit on a relic that I can charge and a talisman in hand. When it plays their commander, which just doesn't do anything. Alright, so I'm going to run out Spellseeker here. I'm already winning, so first I'm going to spend my mana, though, because I'm expecting to untap my lands. So we'll do that. And then after that's been done, go ahead and play Spellseeker. Oh, right, never mind. I decided not to play Spellseeker. I add up the math, and I can just throw artifacts at my opponent until they're dead, so that's the play I make. Boom, 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 nuked, dead. So I don't know what turn this was because I didn't play any lands, but it looks like it was turn 4 kill, which is pretty awesome. Essentially gold fishing. And then the last game of yesterday was against Nikati here. And this opponent is running Dragonlord Atarka. I have to mulligan, but I mulligan into a reasonably good hand against Atarka, given that it's a mana-hungry deck and I've got Orb. So go ahead and ponder into a mana drain, which is always lovely. I don't actually have anything to do with the mana yet, if I'm able to drain here, but hey, I've got it. And I have Remand as well if the card that they play is not impactful enough. My opponent's playing a bunch of cards which definitely are not impactful, so I'm just letting it all slide. Take a little beat down here. Because I don't even want to interact with the cards that my opponent's playing because they're so non-threatening. Alright, opponent goes for Atarka. Lovely, I'm going to grab 7 mana there, and then from there, with 7 mana, I'm able to transmute Muddle, Demonic Tutor, throw the mana into a Gilded Lotus, Treachery, untap a bunch more mana, 2 mana floating, by the way. Throw down a free Winter Orb and pass with Cryptic and Remand up. Top deck a Copy Artifact, which is great, so I'm going to go ahead and play Copy on Lotus and my commander. Still sitting on Remand and Cryptic. Not looking good for my opponent there. Yeah, my opponent sees that and realizes it's over and scoops. So that was the last game of the day yesterday, and then we'll run through a few games from today. Just a handful here. So Lady Toriel being the first opponent. Running Azuri. And I've got a hand rather that's a little bit weak against Azuri. Like, it's not good. It doesn't have early interact. It has early counters, but my opponent could ramp around me with elves. So I decided I'm going to go Grim, even though they have got Concordant Crossroads here, and could go something like Priest of Titania into elf into elf into elf. All right, so, and the reason I did that was because all creatures have haste, and if you do the math, with the Grim Monolith in my hand, I've got just enough mana to go Jitte, kill your priest, go. And I was really hoping that they played a card like that. So here my opponent's unable to play into the Jitte, and the entire game is over because they gave my creature haste. They've lost this game. So that was a pretty cool way to start. I assume she lost this game, so Lady Toriel and everything. All right, so Firemind Apprentice. Second game of the day, I'm playing against Mizzix of the Is Magnus, and I've got the old Enlightened Tutor draw, which is always good. Gonna end turn ET. grab myself. I decided I'm going to tap out here, and I'll just take a Soul Ring. Because if I got a Mana Crypt into Spellseeker, it's not that much difference, but the damage could matter against a red deck. So I'm going to Spellseeker, and I'm going to go ahead and go get Mind Twist because I'm holding Mana Drain for starters, and I have a Soul Ring in play for another thing. But I get a Jace here, so I decide I'm going to Jace and pass because I don't think turn 4 is the turn where they can play their commander, and I'll worry about Mana Drain at that point. Opponent manages to Grape Shot and get my Jace down to 1, but it's not dead, and I'm able to get Shackles. I put Shackles back in the deck like it should be after having played with it yesterday and everything, and just not liking how it felt not to have the option in here. Turns out very good. My opponent has Ruby Medallion and a creature. I'll just regular counter it because I don't need all the mana. I can save Mana Drain for something else. Or I don't think I do anyway. So we'll start with Twist for the hand. Winter Orb, pass. If I did have the extra mana, I could have killed the Ruby Medallion there, so perhaps Mana Drain was the card I should have played last turn. But either way, opponent's basically locked down. I took away all their hand, I took away their creature, and I took away their mana. And at this point, my opponent scoops it up. So we can move on against active Jace to this game against Troy Hessian. We'll run through these last few games here. So DC Undead Vizier, and now you can see the deck is starting to look the way that it is when I showed you at the beginning of this video. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just play a land here. I didn't fetch because I wasn't sure exactly what color I want, probably blue-red, but I didn't want to also thin my deck. Even though it's almost irrelevant, it's 0.01% or whatever, it's still thinning, and I didn't need to do it. So when I'm trying to find land, so I don't. All right, here I could have done something with Brainstorm, but it said I'm actually going to Orb here early, which is crazy, but it turns on with Orb top and the Opal. I can actually use the top under the Orb without being hurt, and because I have the Fire Ice, so my opponent tries to duress me, I can Brainstorm and hide cards. And then because I have the Fire Ice, I can really quickly get all my lands untapped and then start applying Beatdown. And with the early Winter Orb against Mono Black, my opponent just scoops. Mono Black has a really, really tough time with Winter Orb. All right, Captain Fudgy here is playing Traxa Praetor's Voice and has an alright start, but it is not this start. So my start is fast, but still using that basically useless sort of Fire and Ice. Like if it was just Worn Power Stone or almost anything, honestly, but it's not, so I'm done. On it, Field of Ruins, it does me a huge favor because now I have 2 blue and I'm 1 mana away from Tezzeret the Seeker. Imagine if that sword was Worn Power Stone here. But anyway, they play this weird Pure Imaginative Rascal and go get Toothy, which I'm going to go ahead and fetch Factor Fiction instead. I get an Ancient Tomb, which is phenomenal. My opponent's tapped out. I have all too much mana and too few of anything else, artifact mana rather, so I'm going to go ahead and get Winter Orb. Opponent hits Tezzeret down to 1, and now I can pump for a ton of mana. Play my Factor Fiction. My opponent, I don't know if they think that they get to choose who gets what pile, but that doesn't work that way. So I'm going to go ahead and plow that and pass. Runs out a Chalice and an Azuria Signet. So they actually have played 2 solutions to the board state. However, I've got Tack Fade to steal the Chalice. X equals 1 here allows me to go get Expedition Map with 1 mana floating and the 1 land untapped. I go ahead and fetch. I'm going to go get Strip Mine and play it. And unfortunately for my opponent, I'm able to answer both of their workarounds with the Orb on the spot. My opponent just scoops. Lady Toriel again for the day. Plays me with Izuri, so I have to mulligan into a very weak hand, but it does have Shackles. It's just incredibly slow. Fortunately, I do find the Grim there, which is not bad. So I'm thinking next turn is like Shackles activate. But I draw this artifact mana and I decide I'm going to artifact mana Vindicate rather than Shackles and activate. Hoping to find some mana there. I don't. So I'm good here. And I'm hoping that since I didn't, I get to make the exact play that happens here. I don't know if you see it, but here it is. Snapcaster as removal, taking out the creature that untaps Forest, because if I steal Llanowar Elves, I can use his mana, but I can't use the other creatures. Charge, and then Breya, still not hitting land drops here. Opponent's got a Fierce Empath and Elvish Promenade, actually. The Empath went and fetched a Craterhoof, so this is a game of chicken where I'm trying to keep... Basically, I have to do everything I can to try to develop while keeping my opponent off of enough mana to play Craterhoof, and then they do me a huge solid. They don't realize it yet, but play this Wirewood Channeler. So I steal Vedokin Shackles, and now I've got a creature that taps for all the mana I want. I'm going to go ahead and sack in response to Azuri and take out the commander and take a big hit here. So this taps for 1 mana of any color, equal to the number of elves on the battlefield. So now I've got 5 mana, which is just crazy. So I can easily replay Breya and afford to Mind Twist my opponent's hand, and sit on 2 mana for a Breya activation cost. Opponent runs out Beast Whisperer, so I'm going to go ahead and Breya that off the board. And I sack Breya because Wirewood Channel is producing so much mana that it's trivial for me to replay my commander and just get more flyers and more fuel for the removal of my opponent's board. I make a 9/9 and pass. I'm not attacking because I'm at a really low life. I am the control player here, and I'll start attacking when there's nothing my opponent can do about it, rather than swinging in for a point of damage here and losing a potential blocker that could be the difference between winning and losing if my opponent has the right cards. So, but my opponent draws, passes, and loses, so that was kind of cool. Renegade XTC, or rather concedes, is my... So, anyway, Renegade XTC is my next opponent. And they're also playing Azuri, and then just scoop to Breya, so I don't know what that's about, but sure. Then I have these Gamians, Cajun Falconer, which was the game where my opponent just doesn't do anything and then sneaks in at the last minute to time me out with a button click, and it's my fault for not watching, so whatever. Meanwhile, I start another game against someone who, I think this person's name is Zach? No. Anyway, opponent says that they misclicked there, so I feel bad for them. So I tell them that I'm going to play just... I don't say it right away, but I choose mentally to play just slightly different. I know that they've got that card in their hand, so I'm going to Demonic Tutor, and I'm not going to go get Strip Mine, because I know that's their next turn, right? So Ice here proving nice because it encourages them to make that play while digging for mana, and keeping them off from making any other play. And then Ice, again, working very well with Teferi here, because I can Caster Mage back the Ice and keep them off 2 mana for this turn and draw yet another card. And all this stalling, of course, takes me into Mind Twist territory, which is where we're at now. Boom. Only 8 mana to get this lovely effect here. And slam, I take all of the cards out of my opponent's hand with an active Teferi. And if you notice, at the end of this turn, I get to untap 2 blue. I'm going to have a counterspell up even, because Teferi's crazy like that. And then pretty soon we're going to have Throne of the High City running and have multiple, well, with Tezzeret, Teferi, and Throne going, and be drawing 4 cards per turn. I think I can manage to win that game. Of course, Imperial Sealed Teferi immediately will be for Strip Mine at that point. But yeah, it was fine. My opponent misplayed. And that's... and I tried to be a little bit nice about it, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're playing Magic and somebody's got to win, so I will try to make it be me. And that's all I've got, though. Hopefully you enjoyed watching it. That was a neat game to showcase exactly how Fire Ice can be good. But there were also games showing how maybe some of the other card options that I've ignored could be good. Like sometimes I might have wanted Mentor, sometimes I might have wanted O-Ring. There's a lot of flexibility even with just only a handful of slots here. One of these days. So the card that this deck wants the most, unfortunately, is Balance, and it's just been banned forever, basically. I wish that card would just be unbanned. I would love to play me some Balance, but I understand that it won't be. But so one of my favorite cards in all of Magic, so it would be pretty nice. And I actually think, I don't know, if Balance were unbanned, so that's an easy swap there, and I might actually run Time Twister as a built-in response to somebody hitting me with Balance, just so I can deal with it. And of course, because it's good sometimes when you dump your hand and then twist. So anyway, that's all I've got though. Long video, but I've been remiss in doing these types of videos, and so I thought I'd owe you like a lot of content. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself and enjoyed watching. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.